Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you once again to our second segment on this chapter where we'll be discussing macroeconomics. Alright, in the previous video, we have highlighted the fundamentals of microeconomics where we say that it is linked to the issues to do with the prices of goods and services and the quantities that are going to be demanded at particular levels of prices. Okay, so in this particular video we are going to go a step further and discuss about the demand curves in detail, their shift, the movements along the demand curve, and the shift of the demand curve from the left, to the left or to the right. Okay, so without wasting your time, ladies and gentlemen, you know me, I know you, okay? And let us just do the good thing. Let us just subscribe. Let us share the video with our friends wherever possible. And don't forget to click the notification bell and even commenting where you feel I need to improve my lectures on. You just have to highlight on the comment section to this video. By doing so, we will be doing the right thing and we'll be helping one another to improve and also to further the body of knowledge. Okay, so without wasting much of your time, let us go straight to the business of the day. Okay, we talked about that. All right, so we were here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, a shift in the demand curve. A movement along the demand curve shows how demand responds to a change in price and nothing else. Okay, once again, let me just draw the demand curve, ladies and gentlemen. This is our demand curve. The demand curve is like this one. This is the demand curve. So when you are talking of the movement along the demand curve, we are simply talking of the movement along this line. Okay, so we have discussed about this where we say that the higher the price, all right, it means that the quantities that are going to be demanded, let's say at this is price at $2, okay, the prices that could, the quantities that can be demanded will be this much. Let's say this is 10,000 units and this is 1,000 units. So you can see that at 1,000 units, 1,000 units can only be demanded if we charge something like $10. So if we charge $10, we're only going to sell 1,000 units. But if we charge $2,000, we're going to sell 10,000 units. All right, so this means that the lower the prices become, the more the quantities of a good are going to be demanded. So any change in other factors that affect demand cause a shift but not a movement along the demand curve. So any change other than the price, anything, if there is a change in anything other than the price, then we are going to have to witness some shift. When you are talking of a shift, this is a movement of the demand curve either to the right to become D1 or to the left to become D2. All right, so that's a shift. But when you're talking of the movement along the curve, this is the movement we will be talking about. All right, so a shift is caused by other factors, not really the price. So what might cause a leftward shift of the demand curve or in the demand curve? All right, let me just try to illustrate what I mean by a leftward shift. Okay, once again, this is the price and the quantity. Okay, and this is our demand curve. All right, and let's say the original one was this one. This was the original. So when we are talking of a leftward shift, we are simply saying moving to the left. Okay, Let's say the original price, okay, the original price, original equilibrium price, let's say was this one, okay. This was the original price. Let me just put the arrow for the shift there on top. Let me just try to erase it. Okay. So if that was the original demand curve, then a shift to the left would lead to a second demand curve. Let us call that second demand curve D1. All right. So it means that the quantities, let us say this was the price, the original price P. All right. So originally the demand curve, when it was here, the quantities demanded were these ones. However, if there is now a leftward shift, it means that the quantities demanded are going to be at Q1, as you can see there. So there is been also a movement in the quantities demanded. They have reduced. What could cause this movement? All right, this could be caused by a fall in household income. All right, a fall in household income. All right, including an increase in direct taxes. So when the Zimbra guys or whatever, taxmen in your jurisdiction, if they increase the taxes, this impacts negatively on the available income to spend. It means that your income is going to be reduced. All right, and your ability to buy more products would be stifled. All right, so that would lead to a reduction in the quantities of goods demanded. Then a fall in the price of substitute, not necessarily the price of the particular product, but its substitute. When the substitute price is falling, when the substitute price has fallen, it means there is also going to be a shift in the quantities produced of a particular product. Okay, one would ask, why would that happen, or how would that happen? All right, we have indicated in our previous video that a substitute is an alternative of a particular product. Okay, it's another product that can be used in the same way as the current product. All right, and we talked of tea and coffee. All right, so if the price of coffee reduced or has fallen, it means the price of tea has gone up. Okay, and automatically the customer would race for coffee and refuse to buy the product of tea. All right, so if the substitute price is fallen, then it means this other product is not going to be bought, as customers would race for a cheaper substitute. So this would also lead to a leftward shift in the demand curve. What about a rise in the price of complements? Yes, if there is a rise in the price of complementary goods or complements, then there is also going to be a reduction in the quantity of goods demanded, because we say that complementary goods or complements, they are the goods which are used together with this particular product. For example, petrol. Okay, if the prices of cars increase, then the quantities of petrol is likely to be reduced in terms of demand. All right. Then a change in taste away from the good. So when people start to feel that this good is no longer necessary or is no longer wanted, then the quantities demanded is again going to be affected. It is going to be reduced. An expected fall in price. An expected fall in price is in two ways. All right. First, the expected fall in price of the current commodity or product. The expected fall in price would mean that customers would wait to buy it now and then start to buy it later when its price has actually reduced. So in the meantime, they will just have to wait with their money, waiting for the price of the good to be reduced. Or it can be an expected fall in the price of the substitute. So it might be this particular product or the other product which is a substitute. If we know that the substitute of this particular product is going to fall next week, then we're not going to buy this current product, and instead we are going to wait for the substitute's price to fall down and we rush there. So all these are the contributing factors towards the leftward shift of the demand curve. What about the rightward shift? The rightward shift, ladies and gentlemen, let us just draw the graph again. This is the graph, ladies and gentlemen. You just have to be used to draw this graph. Let us say the price, this is price. Okay, let us say our original price is at P. And this is our demand curve, original D. And then there is a shift to the right. Okay, this is a shift to the right, and we get our D1. Okay, that's a shift. Remember, the shift of the demand curve is caused by factors none other than the price of the product. Okay, none other than the price of the product. So you just have, in the example, you just have to think of other factors, not the price of the product. All right. So this is what we're going to do. All right. So the original price of this product was at P, and the quantities demanded were this. That's the original quantity that was being demanded. However, when the factors came into play, when certain factors came into play, the equilibrium price became this one. This was the original equilibrium, but it becomes E1. Okay, and you can see that the quantities have gotten to Q1. So you can see that there has been an increase in the items demanded or quantities demanded. So this could be due to a rise in household income and a reduction in direct taxes. So when employment taxes have been reduced, then we are left with so much disposable income that we can purchase more products. Okay, or there has been a rise in the price of substitutes. So the substitute, the coffee substitute in this case has their price is gone up. Then it be the current price for tea is now lower, so people are now chasing after the tea. So the substitute's price has actually triggered the demand for the for tea. It wasn't actually the price of tea that actually forced them to come, but it was the price of other substitutes. All right. Then a fall in the price of complements. And we talked about the complement. You can see that the behavior of complements and substitutes is actually different, is actually in opposite direction. So a fall in the price of complements. Complementary goods are those goods which are used simultaneously with the current product. So when their price is fallen, okay, when their price has fallen, it means that there is now an advantage to customers, okay, to buy this other product which is used together with the complement. All right, there is now an advantage. Let's say, for example, by default or by miracle, the price of petrol has reduced. It means that those people who were so annoyed to visit car garages or to visit car sales, they would now start to go to the car sale and start to buy cars, because they now know that the price of petrol has reduced. Petrol and cars are complementary products. You can't drive your car without petrol. That's the issue. Okay, so you consume petrol and car simultaneously. Now, a change in taste toward the good. Now, customers are now starting to like this good. For example, in this era of green climate, green technology, people are now vying for solar energy. So their taste towards solar products is actually becoming positive. So they start to demand more of solar products. So a taste towards the purchase of solar products is now increasing, is now becoming good. All right, so a positive change towards the good, in terms of taste, also affects. Then an expected rise in price. This one again would trigger people to purchase goods, especially in countries where there is some hyperinflation. When people feel that next week the price of mealie meal is going to increase, they will start to buy more quantities today. Okay, so that again will lead to the shift in the demand curve. When the demand curve shifts to the right, you can see that the quantities demanded increase. But when the demand curve shifts to the left, the quantities demanded will decrease. Are we together, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. Now, an expectation of a fall in price will lead customers to put off their purchases in the hope of benefiting from lower prices later. We talked about it in the leftward shift of the demand curve. An expected price rise will lead consumers to buy early and stockpile in order to avoid paying a higher price later. We also talked about it in the rightward shift in the demand curve. Now, this is a demand curve, as you can see, with all the illustration as possible. Okay, you can see here that we are being introduced to another area of supply. Okay, we are being introduced to another area of supply, but before we delve much into the area of supply, I just want to explain one or two things concerning this graph. Okay, it's still the original graph we have been drawing. However, there is now a supply curve. This is the supply curve, and these ones have been our demand curves all along. All right, but there is an issue of equilibrium prices. We talked about the equilibrium price, but I did not explain what was going on. The equilibrium price is the price at which the suppliers are willing to sell their product and the customers are willing to buy or to demand of the product. So initially, all right, as you can see on the graph, the equilibrium price was this one at P there, but okay, I mean the price was there, and then you can see that at this price the quantities which could be demanded were these ones. Okay, these were the quantities which could be demanded. So this was the equilibrium point. Okay, that was the equilibrium point at which the quantities demanded were originally priced at that point or at that level. However, as more factors come into play, as more factors other than price come into play, the quantities demanded begin to increase. This is the reason why we are having a rightward shift of the demand curve from A to B. I mean from D, original D to D1, as I have just indicated, and this has made the equilibrium point to become B, as you can see there. But this means that the price of the commodity is no longer at P, but it has also increased to P1. Okay, so the price of the commodity has now increased up to the equilibrium point, and this means that the quantities also the quantities demanded have also increased to Q1. All right, so this means that as the quantities have increased in terms of demand, the suppliers have also increased their expectation, their price. Also, they have also increased their price from original P to P1, and the customers should also be prepared to pay more. Okay, so at point B, that's the equilibrium point, okay, where the suppliers are willing to sell their goods and customers are also willing to buy. All right, that is that. But let us now talk about supply in more detail. As you have seen in the graph there, the supply curve is it's like this. It's a bit different from let me just draw it here. The supply curve. Remember, this is our quantity, this is our price. The supply curve is going to be like this. This is the supply curve, and the demand curve is downward sloping like this. This is demand curve. All right, supply curve is upward sloping, whilst demand curve is downward sloping. Why is the supply curve upward sloping? All right, this is because the higher the price, the more quantities suppliers are willing to offer their products. Okay, the higher the price, as the price goes up, suppliers would increase their supply. Okay, you can see that it's increasing. Okay, at price, let's say this is $5. At price $5 here, at price 5 there, suppliers are willing to sell the goods at this. I mean, they're willing to supply this quantity. But as the price gets to, let's say, $10, the suppliers are now supplying more goods. Quantities being supplied increases. Are we together? So this is why the supply curve is upward sloping. But in the case of a demand curve, you saw that the demand curve was like this. All right, the higher the price, the quantities sold are going to be smaller. We'll be selling here, but when the price become this level, you can see that the quantities demanded by customers would increase. So that's the issue, ladies and gentlemen. Do not be confused with these graphs anymore. All right, the ACCA Tutor is there. When you face any challenges, just let me know so that we help one another. Please, those, as you can see there, on the footnote there, there is my number there. You can just contact me anytime. It's tea time. Okay, anytime, 24/7. We are going to attend to your call. All right, there's always going to be a tutor on call. Now, the supply curve shows the quantity of a good which suppliers would want to produce at a given price. As with demand, a shift in price will cause a movement along the supply curve. But a change in other factors will cause a shift in the supply curve. So, if there is a change in the price of a goods being supplied, then we are only going to witness the movement along the supply curve. But if there are other factors which have come into play, we are going to see a shift either to the left or to the right. That's a shift which is being caused by factors other than the price of the product. Please get these points cast in your heart, because I don't want my students to be surprised on exam day. What are the factors which influence supply? All right. While in the demand curve, when prices increase, demand falls. In the supply curve, as the price increase, production will increase, because higher prices mean that there is the opportunity for more profits. So a rightward shift in a supply curve can be caused by a fall in production costs. Okay, when production costs are falling down, it means suppliers are motivated to produce more. Remember, a rightward shift means that the supply is increasing. Okay, a rightward shift, as you can see here, means that suppliers are motivated to supply more. All right, suppliers are motivated to supply more as quantities are increasing. But when you are talking of a leftward, it means suppliers are contracting their supply. Okay, they are reducing. So when production costs are reducing, then suppliers are motivated to supply more because it becomes cheaper to produce. Then a fall in the price of other goods. When other goods are falling, okay, when the price of other goods are falling, then suppliers are motivated to produce more. This is because, suppliers would feel that their product has got the opportunity to make more profit, as other goods are having their prices falling. Then it means there is an opportunity to make more money with our product, so they continue to produce. Technology changes. Some technology might actually enable the production of goods to become cheaper, so this might also motivate suppliers to produce more. Improved efficiency. Improved efficiency is also a plus, because we are doing the production process as quickly as possible and in a cheaper way, so that also leads to increased production or supply of goods. Then subsidies. These are like grants which are given by the government to producers. So when they are given those advantages, which might be in the form of government grants or some tax shelters, etc., those would enable suppliers to produce more. Lower taxes would also help manufacturers or suppliers to produce more because they are paying less in terms of taxes. Okay, remember, tax is actually an expense to the business. So when the tax rates are lowered, this might motivate them to produce more. Now, the opposite effects will move the curve to the left. So the opposite effects of those ones. So in the exam, you just have to know what are the factors which may cause a supply curve to move to the right. Okay, and if the question is asking you about why or which factors might lead the supply curve to move to the left, you just have to think of the opposite of those factors which cause the supply curve to shift to the right. So simple. Now, if more goods are produced, then to sell them, the price will have to fall until equilibrium is reached again. The equilibrium point moves from A to B in graph 2 overleaf. So let us see this graph 2. Alright, so this is the graph we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. The diagram on the left shows a rightward shift in the supply curve, meaning that more goods will be produced at the same price, or the same number of goods will be produced at the lower price. Okay, all right. To just make sure this point is understood properly, let us go to the curve itself. Let us go on the curve. We are saying the diagram of the left shows a rightward shift in the supply curve, meaning that more goods will be produced at the same price. So if we are having a price P, sorry there, okay, that's our price. All right, let us forget about this. Okay, that's our price there. Now at that price, we are saying we are going to produce more goods at this price. All right, more goods will be produced at the same price. So we are going to produce from this point, okay, all right, or from this quantity, all right, this quantity 1, we are going to produce at that same price. We're going to produce quantities Q1, as you can see there, at that same price. All right, or the same number of goods will be produced at the lower price. So we are simply saying here that at quantity, at the smaller price, okay, at a lower price, let's say P1, we are going to produce, we are going to supply this quantity, okay. All right, so at the same price, or the same number of goods will be produced at a lower price. So at a lower price, we are going to supply this quantity. All right, but as the price increases, we are going to supply this quantity. Okay. All right. So this means that if we go back to our price P1 here, you can see that as the price is lower, okay, the original supply would be this one, okay, this quantity here. Let me just call this quantity Q2. All right. So at P1, this could be the price for this supply at Q2 here. However, as the factors come into play, for example, production efficiency, all right, this would mean that at that same price, at that small price, we are going to produce a quantity that is equivalent to the original QTY, that is let me just call it Q0, all right, as you can see there. That's because there has been some production efficiency, or there's been some subsidies, so the price is not going actually to be affected. All right. However, the supply has increased. All right. Similarly, here, at the price P, okay, let me just call this P0. All right. At the price P0, the original equilibrium price was at A, as you can see there. All right, but because the factors have come into play, it means that at that same price, we are going to supply more which means that the new equilibrium becomes here. When in terms of, the new quantities that are going to be supplied should be at this level. All right, which means this will lead to us Q1 as you indicated there. However, as more goods, okay, are produced, then to sell them, the price will have to fall. It means that when it's still the issue of marginal utility diminishing, all right, the diminishing of the marginal utility, where we say that as the increment of goods supplied continues, it means that the marginal utility of the good starts to dwindle or starts to fall. So the more the goods are being supplied, then their price is going to be forced to fall. This is why you see that the equilibrium demand would also fall, okay, would move from this point to B, okay. The supply would move from that point to B, as you also see that in terms of the prices, the price would also fall, okay, will fall to this point, okay, and B becomes the right equilibrium. This becomes the right equilibrium because we can't, everyone is now supplying the good, all right. The good is now flooded the market, all right. So it means that its price is going to fall. Okay, that's it. All right. So one more thing I want to highlight here is that the equilibrium point, which was originally A and is now become B, simply means that this is the point where the quantity demanded equals quantity supplies. Okay, so as you can see, the red line is our demand curve, and the demand curve, right? And the blue ones, this was our original supply curve, and this one is the new supply curve. All right. So you can see that originally the supply curve and the demand curve were meeting at point A, okay, which means the quantities demanded was Q0, as you can see there, as well as the quantities which were supplied was at that level. All right, but as the factors came into play, as we've just discussed, you could see that they should, at the price P0, at the original price, the original quantity should have been Q1, okay, which I indicated as here according to the line at that price. However, because market forces come into play and the quantities of the goods supplied are now overflowing at the moment and the market is flooded, this means that the price of the commodity will reduce as suppliers fight for customers. So this is why the price is reduced to zero. Okay, I hope that's the clarity which everyone needed. All right, let's move on a step further in our analysis of the supply and demand curves. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can now get a step further into our discussion as we continue with our supply curves. So these are just a few things I hope you need to know with regards to this subject matter. All right, so remember, a firm's supply curve is also called its marginal cost curve, right, above its average variable costs in the short term. All right, so we just have to be comfortable with these terms because they are going to be resident whenever we talk of economics. Now, the marginal cost curve is a supply curve only because a perfectly competitive firm equates price with marginal cost. This happens only because price is equal to marginal revenue for a perfectly competitive firm. Thus, profit maximization is at the point where the marginal cost curve is equal to marginal revenue. Okay, where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. And we have already pointed out that when we are talking of marginal cost, we are simply saying the cost incurred in producing an extra unit. All right, the cost a firm incurs in producing an extra unit. Now, when we are talking of a perfect competition or perfect competitive firm, okay, when you are talking of a perfectly competitive firm or a firm in perfect competition, we are simply saying that in that market where the firm is operating, the firm is not the one that determines the price, but the market itself determines the price of the product. So market forces come into play. Okay, so the market determines price. Okay, so the supply curve shows the different prices at which businesses are willing to offer their products. Hence, the supply will depend on the extra cost of production of these extra units, also known as the marginal cost, as we have just stated. So, if a business doubles its production, for example, from 50 units to 100, and thus raising its total cost from 200 to 400, its marginal cost of production will then become $4. How did we obtain the $4? We are simply saying that $400 minus $200. Okay, thus the new cost is now $400. All right, but which is shifted from the original $200. So that's 400 minus 200, all divided by 100 minus 50, and we get the marginal cost. The marginal cost usually falls at the start of a business because the business is using resources more efficiently. Okay, so this is why you see the marginal cost graph having some decrease in the initial stages of the business. However, running up against land or machinery capacity levels will usually cause marginal cost to rise because businesses are most inclined to supply additional quantities of a product if the price received covers those rising marginal costs. So let me just try to explain a few things here. All right, this is our curve, ladies and gentlemen. All right, now initially, all right, we have a marginal cost curve is like this. Okay, you can see that from the above statement, I mean the statement which we have just talked about, initially, okay, the marginal costs tend to decrease as we produce extra units. Okay, they tend to decrease, all right, because initially the firm would be efficient in the way it does its business. However, you can see that the cost starts to decrease. As production takes place, the firm starts, the cost of the firm, the marginal cost, start to increase. Why is it so? This is something to do with what is called the law of diminishing returns. Okay, the law of diminishing returns, because the marginal costs are not permanently going to decrease. After a certain time, they start to increase. Why? Because of the law of diminishing returns. At some point, these costs will start to rise. All right, let us just take take this example down where excuse me, we have got a company that has got let's talk, for example, this is hypothetical, okay? Let's say a company in the restaurant business, okay? For example, let's talk of Chicken Inn. Okay, let's talk of Chicken Inn, a Zimbabwean company that deals in the production and supply of pizza. All right, this company has got workers. All right, workers. All right, and produces pizza. All right, it produces pizza. The workers from our 5 M's, remember our 5 M's in the previous video, workers are part of the inputs. Okay, these are inputs, and then pizza is the output. Okay, so we have got the number of employees which Chicken Inn could employ. Let's say it employs 0. So obviously the amount of pizza which could be produced would be 0. What about when it employs 1 worker? The number of pizza which could be produced is 5. Okay, but when the company employs, let's say, more workers, all right, when the company employs more workers, let's say 2, all right, we are going to have an increase in the pizza that we produce, that the company produces. Okay, this becomes 10. All right, or just let us just make them a larger number, a bit larger number. Okay, say 15. Okay, now when they employ a 3rd worker, the quantities of pizza become 20. All right, and then when they employ 4, the quantities of pizza, the output becomes 22. When they employ 5, the quantities of pizza become 22. And when they employ the 6th worker, the quantity of pizza becomes 18. Okay, now to realize if there is any diminishing of returns, we have to determine what is called the marginal product. Marginal product. Okay, now if we do not employ anybody, if we do not put input, we must not expect to get anything. So there is going to be a zero, nothing that comes up. Okay, but when we employ one worker, okay, there is an output of 5. So obviously our marginal product is 5. All right, but when we employ an additional worker, all right, we get additional pizza of 10. All right, there was a movement from 5 to 15, so there is 10, which is a marginal product, the extra product which we incur, which we have as outputs. When we employ the third worker, the extra pizza we get are just 5. From 15 to 20, that's 5. Then when we employ the fourth one, we only have got 2 extra pizza. All right. When we employ the fifth worker, there is a 0. All right. And then when we employ the sixth worker, there is a -4. All right. So you can see that there is now a diminishing of returns. Initially, because of some synergy or some specialization, there is some advantage. Okay, there is some advantage. When we employed 2 more, all right, there was an advantage because the pizza increased. All right, that's an issue of to do with specialization, and also more numbers at that level were a good managerial decision. However, when we continue to employ more inputs, okay, more workers, then the returns started to diminish. All right, so the diminishing of returns started at the third worker. Okay, that's when they started to fall. The returns started to fall. So this could actually be shown in the behavior of the marginal cost curve. So I wanted to illustrate this point on how the marginal cost curve behaves in such a fashion. Initially, when the business starts its operations, it is effective maybe because the equipment is still new or the workers are still motivated. But as production quantities increase, they start to feel overspent, they feel tired and so forth. They are demotivated. So many variables are coming into the space and the returns start to diminish. All right, so let's go back to our analysis. All right, now we know that the firm will supply where the marginal cost is equal marginal revenue. So when the marginal cost equals marginal revenue, that's when there is what is called profit maximization. Profit maximization. All right, where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. All right, and in most studies of financial management or economics, wealth maximization of shareholders is actually the priority of every manager. So when you are talking of profit maximization, we are simply saying when the firm can meet its variable costs. That's when it is prepared to enter into business or to supply. Okay, when it can meet its marginal costs. So consequently, the firm's chosen level of output forming supply curve are shown in the figure on the right. So this is the figure we are talking about, that graph on the white space. So right, we can see that at price P1, let me just look for a red pen. This is price P1. Okay, so at price P1, the firm supplies quantity Q1. So this is what we are talking about. All right, so at this price, the firm is supplying this quantity. All right, why? Because the marginal cost curve, this is the marginal cost curve, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, the marginal cost curve is intersecting with the marginal return, the marginal revenue, MR1. Okay, that's the marginal revenue. All right. When prices rises to P2, the output increases to Q2. So when the price rises to P2, the quantities, okay, increases to Q2. So there is an increase there because the price has increased. So the firm is motivated to supply more. All right, and so on and so on. That could continue to go, provided the firm has the capacity to increase its sales output. All right, in these conditions, the firm's marginal cost curve becomes its supply curve. All right, so you can see also that the behavior of the marginal cost curve is actually the behavior, the upward sloping of the supply curve. All right. Now, however, remember there is a minimum price level below which a firm will not supply. In the short run, a firm will only continue to supply if the selling price covers all its variable costs. So if the selling price can cover all the firm's variable costs, then business will continue. At price P2 and quantity Q4, at price P2 and quantity Q4, the supplier's average revenue will be less than its average cost. All right. So at Q4 here, you can see that the average revenue is less than the average cost. This is our average cost curve. Okay, you can see that the average cost curve is moving this way. Okay, that's the average cost curve, but our average revenue here is actually at this level. Okay, at this quantity at Q4, you can see that this is Q4. Okay, so the average revenue is at this level, but you can see that the average cost curve is actually at this point. So the statement is saying that at that level, the supplier's average revenue, okay, the average revenue here is less than the average cost, but greater than its average variable cost. The average variable cost, ladies and gentlemen, is this one. So this is the average cost. It is actually below the average revenue. Okay, so what does that mean? Because the average cost here is greater than the average revenue here, The firm makes a loss. The firm is making a loss. But some of its fixed costs are still paid for. Alright, so the fixed costs are still being paid for because the average revenue is greater than the average cost. As you can see, the average cost is actually lower than the average revenue, which is on top. So if the firm had stopped producing altogether, it would still incur its fixed costs, even though there will be no sales income to pay for any of these fixed costs. So it would have been financially worse off than it was by producing at a level where the average revenue is greater than the average cost, even though it made a loss at this point. So whatever it is, there was actually an advantage in terms of meeting fixed costs which do not which are always going to be incurred even if we made some sales or not. So it's actually better in that sense. Okay. However, in terms of profitability or profit maximization, we are not going to make any profit at the quantity Q4. So which quantity will actually lead us to profit maximization? The profit maximization quantity is a quantity when the marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. So you can see initially it was at this point, okay? However, it has moved to Q3 because this is where the marginal cost is meeting our marginal revenue, the new marginal revenue. Okay, so Q3 is actually the safest production quantity. Okay, so the supplier is actually willing to supply at the price P3 because at that price the marginal costs are equal to marginal revenue. All right, if it continues to supply at Q3 again, there is also this argument that you can see that the quantities, okay, the quantities Q4 would be met. The marginal revenue for this quantity would be at this level, all right, at this level, but the marginal cost will be higher. All right, so the the cost would be, let's say, at price P4 here. The cost will be at P4 price in terms of price, yet the revenue would be at P3. So you can see automatically that Q4 is actually a loss-making quantity as already indicated. All right, so Q4 is actually a loss-making quantity. All right, so I hope, ladies and gentlemen, you have been helped so far. In our next segment, we are going to discuss about the issues to do with elasticity. Okay, we are going to touch on those ones in our next video. All right, so at the moment, I hope you guys have been attended to when it comes to the basics of microeconomics. Please stay tuned to our next video. Don't forget to subscribe, to share, to comment, whatever, and also to just come and become a formal student to our Transcal Consulting Services Academy. This is an online academy which is readily available for your ACCA or whatever accounting study you are pursuing. Remember, our website is just www.transcal consulting. It's just one word, transcribe consulting.co.zw. So this should be your home of economics, of finance, of accounting, everything, so that we help one another to blow those examiners away, to ensure our economies function as they should, and everything else we need to know. Until next time, may you feel very, very excited. I am signing out.